President of Court, Mr. Bar-Or, please proceed. Mr. Bar-Or, I shall call Mr. Yitzhak Nehama as our next witness.
Quiet, please, says the presiding judge. When are they knocking off? Speaking.
The witness, I would like to testify standing up and not sitting down. President of Court, I haven't even put the proposition to you about sitting down yet. Please put your right hand on the Bible and say after me, I swear by God that my testimony in this trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. What is your full name?
Yitzhak Nehama.
Please reply to Mr. Bar-Or's question, sir. Mr. Nehama, where were you born?
I was born in Salonika in 1910. 1910.
You served in the Greek army, sir?
Yes. I was conscripted at the time of the war with Italy on the 22nd of October 1943.
What front did you serve on?
I was in Setapaleni front in Albania.
What were the sanitary conditions at the time of your demobilization?
The situation was very difficult, but I was lucky to work as a male nurse in the hospital. And thus I had the good luck not to be in the front. And there were, of course, many victims and very
When were you demobilized?
I was demobilized when the Germans came, when the Germans actually defeated the Greeks in March 1941.
What front was that on?
I was in Yanina, in the Yanina front. Yanina.
Presiding Judge, you can raise your hand off the Bible now.
About 20 days I walked, 28 days to be exact. It's very easy to say so, but very difficult to do so. When I came home, I was completely fagged out. And when I came, all the time there were troubles with the Greeks. They wanted to take us to forced labor. We had to work without stop. And happened all the time. And I had to work, there was no other alternative. But the situation was extremely difficult.
Now, Mr. Nehama, after this march of 1 month, when you arrived in Saloniki, were the Germans then already there?
I was informed by the radio.
Did you have a radio at home?
Yes, I had a radio set, a very good wireless set as a matter of fact. And I heard on the radio that the Germans were already there. There was an order from the High Command that every Jew within 24 hours has to give up his wireless set. We had no right to keep private wireless sets.
Now, in those days, did you have to surrender other articles?
Every day there were some other instructions. They wanted to get rid of us, and therefore they would enact all sorts of decrees, so that we had to
Pianos? You had to give up pianos?
surrender pianos. Yes, the Jews had pianos. Later on, the Jews had no right to avail themselves of telephones, so they had to deliver their telephones as well.
You mean trucks also had to be given up?
Yes, they also the Jews were to give up their trucks if they had any. The Jews had trucks, as a matter of fact, and also books. The Jews had libraries. And our rabbis were weeping bitterly when those books were taken. I still hear the weeping of the rabbis still reverberating in my ears.
Now, Mr. Nehama, you were in the army. You can tell uniforms. What were the uniforms worn by these people who took the books or who lugged away the pianos and all these objects? How were they dressed? What were their uniforms?
These were Gestapo men. That means to say, how will I say it? How to put it?
President of Court, what color of uniform?
Brown color.
Could you tell them apart from the German army people? How did you know they were not German soldiers?
It's difficult to say. Of course, it was not so easy.
Did the German soldiers walk about Salonika at that time? And also Marines, German Marines and sailors?
In Saloniki was actually the center. This was the rallying point of the army. All kinds of units were pouring in.
Now, when you returned to Salonika, you returned to your occupation, didn't you? What was it?
I had a stationery shop. I had a partner who was a Yugoslav citizen.
President of Court, please, sir, can you speak a little more clearly so I can understand?
As he was a Yugoslav citizen.
Now, in what quarter did you have your shop? Was it a Jewish quarter?
No, our shop was not situated in a particular Jewish quarter. It was in a Greek quarter.
Now, please tell the court what happened to Jewish businesses in Salonika at that time.
Every day there were troubles befalling the Jews. People would come and simply loot the shops. Some say they would come and take goods without payment at all. They were very rich Jews, even millionaires. There was a shop owned by Chaim Rubin. They looted the shop completely, so nothing was left there.
Did they pay for these shops?
Not at all. There were also ironmongery shops, ironware shops, and also these shops would be looted, and they had to surrender their goods without any payment whatsoever. This is how things were going on.
Now, what can you tell the court about the concentration of the Jews in certain restricted areas?
We had very difficult lives. It was a true ordeal in every respect.
Mr. Nehama, President of Court, Mr. Nehama, don't give a general description. Say, what did the Germans do? I mean, President of Court, I mean, you were asked, were the Jews concentrated in one separate quarter or neighborhood?
I will tell you exactly how it was, Your Honor. On the 11th of July, 1942, they had some sort of official gazette, an official mouthpiece
of court, a German newspaper.
This was a morning paper and also one evening paper of the Germans, and there an order was published that the Jews aged between 18 and 45 were to report. This was issued on Friday, so they had to report on Saturday at 6 o'clock, in a square, the so-called Liberation Square, a very large square where the Jews had to report.
Mr. Bar-Or, I now show you document number 1117. Could you please look at it? There's something in Greek there and underneath a Hebrew translation, right? Please do not read it now. Study the document and tell the court whether you remember this particular document.
Yes, of course I remember it. Very
What
well.
is it?
This is the order I was speaking about, the order that the Jews
This
were
is
to
the
report.
order about which you just told the court?
Exactly, sir.
President of Court, this will be Exhibit T974.
Yes, on Saturday.
And you were ordered to report in this big square on Saturday, yes?
This is what it was called the Liberation Square in Athens. In Saloniki, I'm sorry. Eleftherias.
Did many Jews appear?
9,000 Jews reported there.
And you among them.
And I was among them, of course.
What happened?
I was wearing my Sunday best, and right away blows were showered on us. Right away, before I ever knew what was going on.
I don't know who, who were these people?
I
who
believe
beat
these were
you?
the SS men.
I now show you a picture. Would you please study this picture and tell us what it represents?
This is exactly this Eleftheria Square, the square of the liberation where Jews were reported on that
Are
day.
these the Jews reporting on the Eleftheria Square on that Saturday? Can you identify the place?
Yes, of course.
That will be Exhibit T975. Mr. Bar-Or, I now show you the photograph of a man on whose head water is being poured from a bucket. Can you perhaps recall this incident and tell the court about it?
This was not a single incident. There were many incidents of this kind.
What is it?
They gave so many blows so that people were fainting, and then they were pouring water on people so as to revive them, and then they would beat them again.
What did they do with them?
There was an order to stand in line without moving, and if anybody budged, he was beaten severely, because people couldn't possibly stand motionless for hours on end. And should anybody budge, then blows were showered on him right away. And this was also their little game. They would approach a line, and they would single out a few people who would be beaten up without any reason whatever. And there were some Germans who would simply egg them on and encourage them.
President of Court, pardon me, but who is pouring this water?
These are some SS soldiers.
And who are the people watching, looking on from the side? Please look at the picture once again.
This is a soldier. And the Jews are looking on, and you can see fear in their eyes. The Jews who were in the line.
President of Court, I see, thank you. That will be Exhibit T976. Mr. Bar-Or, I now show you another picture. Could you tell the court what you see in this picture?
I see Jews here.
President of Court, could we have this photograph too so we can follow the description of the witness?
And the Jews look already tired, and the SS shows them how to stand. They demonstrate how to stand up.
You mean the SS man is making certain motions and the Jews have to imitate this? Is
Yes,
that
exactly.
it? President of Court, this is exhibit T977. Mr. Bar-Or. Dr. Savatius, may I please also take a look at these pictures? Mr. Bar-Or, I now show you a photograph of a man being whipped, and you see sailors in the background. What does it represent? Can you identify this?
I'll tell you. One has already fallen down, and the soldier wields a club in his hand. I don't think one has to examine the picture too assiduously because it is quite clear. The Germans are watching the incident and laughing. These are the sailors, German sailors.
In the white uniforms, you mean?
Yes.
President of Court, this is exhibit T978. Judge Halevi asking, these are sailors beating Jews, is that it? Mr. Bar-Or, apparently there were different units in this German camp. Mr. Bar-Or, Mr. Nehama, what else do you see?
Yes, you can see it clearly. The Jews can't do it anymore, just marking time. It's after all from 8 to 8:30 up to 2 o'clock. They can't hold out any longer, so just marking time, trying to camouflage their tiredness, as it were.
This is exhibit T979. Mr. Bar-Or, here is another picture, Mr. Nehama. I want you to look at it. Does this pertain to the same affair?
Yes, this is exactly the same incident.
President of Court in the same square?
Yes, at the very same square. Those who had caps had taken off their caps.
This
One
will
had,
be exhibit T980.
one had to be without caps, though, bareheaded.
Mr. Bar-Or, and this picture, what does that represent?
Exactly the same occurrence.
Same square?
The same square.
Can you identify the building? Do you recognize it? Do you recognize the building?
Yes, I do.
President of Court, this is exhibit T981. Mr. Bar-Or, here now is a picture of a man laying down on the ground. In front of him, a number of people not in uniform who make motions to other people in front of them. Could you explain this scene? What is happening here, Mr. Nehama, in the scene described in this picture?
I'll tell you. This might mean that the soldiers got tired and that they took Jews in order that they should demonstrate the movements.
Mr. Baror, who is demonstrating the motions here? You mean other Jews had to show, to go through the motions?
The Germans themselves got tired and they asked the Jews, they took the Jews and made them repeat the motions to the other
President
fellow
of Court,
Jews.
this is T981. Mr. Baror, now we have a picture showing people filing in a line, and in front of them a smaller number of people going through gymnastics. Could you explain this picture, please?
This is very simple. These people are taken out of the line, put them in the middle of the square so that they should demonstrate the physical exercise to the remaining colleagues.
I see. Who were the people that were taken out of line? Was this by accident or special people?
No, this was a special guard. And they were holding their rifles, of course, because they were afraid that the Jews might
President of Court, you may have understood, but I didn't understand, sir. I didn't understand the reply. Perhaps, Mr. Nehama, you can repeat your explanation.
I'll tell you. The soldiers took out of the line a few Jews and put them in the middle in order that they should demonstrate the few exercises to the other Jews.
Mr. Baror, repeating a question of the President of Court. Who were the people picked out of the lines to make these gymnastics?
This was simply, they were simply picked at random.
President of Court, T983. Mr. Baror, now the last photograph. I show you a picture of a man doing gymnastics under instructions from a sergeant or an SS man. One cannot recognize him. Do you know, can you recognize this picture?
This is myself.
President of Court, it is you kneeling here in this picture, yourself?
Yes, this is myself, yeah, doing the knee bend. If you had seen me on Saturday at 2:30, in what state I was, what blows I was given. I was quite a sight then. I don't know why. I didn't do them any harm. I didn't owe them anything. And then they received me with a shower of blows.
Please, one moment, Mr. Nehama. President of Court, this is Exhibit T984. President of Court asking, who took these photographs?
It is quite possible that German girls who were watching the scene from the balconies, and they had their cameras, and as soon as they saw people beaten up, they were clapping their hands, applauding the occurrence.
President of Court, in any event, you yourself did not notice anyone taking photographs.
Of course, I didn't know that anybody was taking snapshots at that time. I was not conscious. I was only told later about these snapshots being taken.
Mr. Baror, these beautiful gymnastics, after... How were people selected? By numbers or what? How did you know that you had to go and report for work?
We were given an Ausweis as a certificate, and there was a number. If I'm not mistaken, it was a number 190, and then I saw in the paper, among other numbers which were to report, I saw the number of my identity card, 190. Then we reported for work.
And there were 540 of you? President of Court, I cannot hear you, Mr. Nehama.
Yes, this was in the community premises.
President of Court, you mean to say the synagogue?
Yes. And there was the...
Was that the synagogue, the Yosef Nissim synagogue?
Yes.
And there were Greeks there, yes?
Yes, these were the Greeks and Germans. And we were examined, and we said, and they said that we are all right for this work.
Mr. Bar-Or, what was the real condition of the people when they came to report for work?
We suffered already at the hands of the Italians. We had nothing to eat. Yes, we were starving even before. We were starving more than the rest of Europe.
But nevertheless, you were taken to work.
Yes, precisely. They know very well that we wouldn't do it on a voluntary basis. After having taken a shower, we were sent to Uberland factory.
Where was that?
This was a German firm.
In Greece?
Yes, in Greece. And I was working there in the quarries, and I was taking out stones from the mountain.
President of Court, can I have the name of that firm again?
Uberland.
Was it German?
Yes, this is a German name. Uberland.
Mr. Bar-Or, do you remember the name of the German who was supervising this work?
Müller was the one who was responsible for the whole operation.
And how long did you do this work?
I was working there for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, as I was saying, and there was very scanty food. We had about 100 grams of bread per day, and only very little, some very bad soup. Our feet were swollen, we couldn't work anymore, and people were suffering from dysentery. And there were Croats, they were most notorious there, and they manhandled us most terribly. I'll never forget him.
President of Court, unless there is quiet in the court, I shall have to take steps. I'm very sorry about this. Please quiet in the hall.
No, we didn't get back. There were lots of victims. Many people died in the course of work there. And those who remained started some sort of a mutiny and protested against this work. $100,000 were paid. If you want the equivalent in drachmas, it was 2.5 million drachmas.
Mr. Bar-Or, the community paid this, and to whom was it paid?
All the rich people actually were contributing. Money was actually taken from
To whom was the money paid?
This was paid to the Kommandatur, to the German command.
And after this payment you were released?
And after this ransom payment, as it were, was given, we were freed then. But problems did not cease to exist. Again, they started with Jews. My late brother, for example,
President of Court, Mr. Nehama, I am sorry, I cannot hear you. Please face me when you are speaking.
You said that the troubles with partisans began. The partisans wanted to get their own back on the Germans, and they said to start guards. And the Jews themselves were taken by the Germans and were to constitute the guards. And if something happened, if, for example, the partisans were succeeded in doing something against the Germans, then the Jewish guard was executed as retaliation for their negligence, as it were.
Mr. Bar-Or, you were in Salonika then?
I was in Salonika at that time. I am relating to you what was known to me.
You stayed in Salonika until what
I
date?
remained in Salonika up to the 26th of April 1943.
What happened then?
Then transports began.
What happened then? What?
Near Krakow, we were supposed to deposit our money so as to get the equivalent in zlotys. We were told that we would be living in communities, that every Jewish community would be working apart. This would be almost like Palestine. So we said, all right, we'll go there. And
President of course, well, what did happen? You were sent?
yes, I was sent then. Do you know? Do you want to know exactly? I was sent to Auschwitz. I stayed 38 days in Auschwitz. I was working in a factory there, producing spare parts for tanks.
Whose factory was that?
Świętochłowicz.
What did they manufacture?
They manufactured
Anti-aircraft tanks, you mean?
anti-aircraft
What's that?
tanks.
What's that?
Perhaps
perhaps?
anti-aircraft guns, I suppose. There I was working for 18 months.
Where were you sent then?
From there I was sent to Mauthausen.
And later?
Whence I was sent to Gusen.
Gusen, where is that?
Gusen 1. This is near Vienna.
And then what happened? When was that, rather?
It was January, February 1945. No, it was March actually, 1945.
Where were you liberated?
I was liberated in Belz, near Linz, on the 4th of May 1945.
President of court, that is to say you were outside of Greece for a period of 2 years? Mr. Bar-Or, I have one more question. When you got to Auschwitz and you got off the train, what happened? Not on the next day, but on that at that very moment when you got off the train.
There were 78 people. This was the smallest group. It was difficult. There were boys and girls. It was very difficult to live in those conditions. But they told us that we were going to Krakow, and they told us to take whatever we could. There were even people who took umbrellas. We were told that there was snow and rain, so we took all sorts of personal belongings, to the extent that it was very difficult to move in the compartment.
Mr. Bar-Or, now what happened when you got off the train at Auschwitz?
When we got off, I saw right away people in pyjamas. Luckily they were French, and I have a smattering of French, and I asked them what's going to happen here. And they said, we can't possibly tell you. For the moment, hurry up. I couldn't even see my wife. Right away, the Germans began beating us up. What weeping there was, what tears.
Mr. Nehama, did you know the people who were taken from Salonika to Auschwitz? Could you tell the court whether any of these people are still alive and how many?
I'll tell you. When we left, 56,000 Jews were transported, and only 1,950 came back.
President of court, and out of your transport, of the people you knew, how many returned
I'll
from
tell you
them?
exactly. 4 people live here in this country from my transport, 3 in America, about 10 people.
Out of how many?
In our transport, we were 2,700.
And what was the number 78 which you mentioned?
No, 78 were in one compartment, and the transport was 2,700, and only 10 have survived from the transport.
The 10 survivors are from the whole train.
Of course, I'm speaking about the entire train.
Thank you, Mr. Nehama. You have completed your testimony. Mr. Bar-Ord, by permission of court, we shall continue dealing with the documents relating to Greece. I come now to Vislitzeni's attempt to enter into the area occupied by the Italians. It's our document 1007. It is a report from Henke of the Foreign Ministry, dated 3rd of June 1943. It brings to the attention of the State Secretary in the Foreign Ministry a complaint by the Italian embassy, which has been raised once again. The background is familiar to us. This follows the capture of the Salonika Jews. Jews of non-Greek nationality were also captured, and they included Italian nationals. The Italians insist on their prestige, they stand on their prestige. Despite the Italians' efforts and their intervention with the German authorities in Salonika, the military commander informed the Consul General on the 21st of May that with great regret, despite the official German promise, a certain family which had Italian nationality was deported in the last train to Poland. The deportation was carried out according to instructions from the SS officer Vislitzeni, it says.
T-985.
Mr. Bar-Or, now our document 1008, the Foreign Ministry, it is Fontadin here, requests that the Secretary of the Italian Embassy Lanza appear before him so he can receive explanations in connection with this case of one family. The man appeared, and it transpired that the Italian had complaints about Vislitzeni's penetration into the Italian-occupied area of Greece, and he protested strongly against this. In this connection, one should point especially to the passage which is on page 2 of our document. It is on the translation under the title A. Here they speak about the accused. The accused saw this document. It was marked T37 in brackets 76. The accused, in commenting about this, says that Fontadin puts into my mouth things which I would never have done. Mr. Bar-Or, the comments of the accused are on pages 3341 et sequitur of the transcript of his statement. The passage which interests us most is on page 3344. The accused here claims that Fontadin had been reporting about things which never happened at all. Incidentally, he gives a letter of recommendation, as it were, to his subordinate Vislitzeni.
This is T-986.
Now our document 1009. A complex document sent by the Foreign Ministry on the 24th of June 1943 to the Italian legation in Berlin on the same matter, again the Vislitzeni matter. The Foreign Ministry, in fact, rejects these protests brought by the Italians, and the reply, a copy of the reply, goes to the accused and to the Consul General, the German Consul General in Salonika.
T-987.
And now 1001, rather 1010.
Von Tadden sends to the accused an urgent letter regarding the negotiations with the Spanish government with regard to Spanish Jews of Salonika. It was possible that Spain would give them the right to return to Spain, namely 600 Jews of Spanish origin, and the matter was actually submitted to Eichmann, as it transpires from the marginal remark in this document.
President of Court, what is the marginal notation?
It is said, an das Reichssicherheitshauptmann zum Händen Obersturmbannführer Eichmann. This document was NG 5050, which is not here in its original form, but in its copy form. Perhaps it will become clearer to the court. On page 2 of the aforesaid document, to Reichssicherheitshauptamt and so on. We have no photostatic copy. It is NG as it was drafted by the prosecution authorities at Nuremberg. I would also like to add that the Foreign Ministry expresses its consent for the transfer of these Jews to Bergen-Belsen. 628. 682, the letter of Bergman to Rome, dealing with the acquiring of Italian nationality by Jews of various nationalities. And here is the announcement of the head of SIPO and SA on the attempt involving the Wehrmacht commander in Salonika, and he requests the cancelling of Italian nationality of the Jews, because if they acquire this nationality, they will not be deported. And here is a telegram of Markinson, German ambassador to Rome, on the 23rd of March 1943, on the announcement of the Italian Foreign Ministry with regard to Jews residing in the Italian zone of occupation, and the answer is that the Jews on those territories would be given the same treatment as mentioned in previous documents.
That will be Exhibit T990. T992. Mr. Bar-Or. Vislitseni recalls on the first sentence that Eichmann had told him that indeed Rolf Günther, his permanent deputy, had flown to Salonika in order to negotiate with the military authorities about the problems of the accused's own department. He recalls Merten, with whom he came in contact, and finally he mentions the chief rabbi, Rabbi Koretz, with whom he would have to deal eventually in Salonika. Eichmann told him that he, Vislitzeni, would be responsible for this operation. This affidavit clearly shows that Vislitzeni was not satisfied, but when eventually a second man joins him from B4, who was Brunner, this man Brunner did not know that Vislitzeni was in charge of operations in Salonika on behalf of 4B4. And this was a cause of dissatisfaction to Vislitzeni. And then he speaks about the epidemic which broke out. He did not want to carry on with these deportations. He cabled to Eichmann to Berlin and asked him to postpone these deportations. The reply from Eichmann was sent to, not to Vislitzeni, but to Brunner. And in a cable to Brunner, Eichmann gives instructions for total and immediate deportations in spite of the epidemic among the local population.
And then he concludes, goes back to Bratislava and tells in short how events developed after the Italians were beaten in the south and the entry of the Germans. I come now to document 421, and this is T37-140 in brackets, shown to the accused, and his comments are in his statement, page 1846. This is a letter from von Taden to the accused, dated 28 July 43. He refers to what we already saw, the proposition by the Foreign Office to remove the Jews called Spanish from the deportation to Bergen-Belsen.
That will be Exhibit T993.
The thing is implemented, the Jews are brought to Bergen-Belsen, and finally the question of their property is discussed. About this subject we find the report in the form of a verbal note in our document 345, shown to the accused, marked as T37 brackets 144. Vislitzeni reports in regard to the seizure of all foreign currency from those Spanish Jews found in their possession before their deportation to Bergen-Belsen, and this report is attached to this verbal notice of the Foreign Office. The subject is the seizure of 23,800,000 drachma.
President of Court, what was the exchange value of the drachma at that time? Do you know, sir?
I cannot say, I'm sorry, I cannot help the court. I do not quote all the document, but there is also another currency. There is also in Swiss francs.
That will be Exhibit T994.
I come now to 1022, a letter from Günther to von Taden on the 14th September 43, dealing with a Jewess, a Greek subject. While evacuations were being implemented in Greece, was sent to Birkenau. The request for her permission to go to Switzerland cannot be considered.
President of Court, I believe we've encountered that name before.
We know the name. This is the Jew who represented the Red Cross and was arrested in Saloniki. The court already has a document in regard to this man, and this is his wife.
It will be Exhibit T995.
176 was shown to the accused, T37 brackets 97. A letter from Neubacher in Athens. Sent to the Foreign Office on the 27th of November 43. Finally, von Taden sends on the whole matter to Eichmann's office on the 2nd of December 43. Neubacher requests that the head of the security police be moved to postpone the deportation of the Jews from Athens. This is after the entry of the Germans into Athens and the fall of Badoglio.
You mean Badoglio's capitulation or his rise to power in Italy? Question of President of Court.
After the German army came into Athens, Your Honor is right. This concerns 8,000 Jews, mostly in the meantime under Italian government and by help of the local population, escaped or succeeded in hiding so that it is impossible to get hold of them in a short time. He begs to be informed of instructions from the head of the security police of the Reich. The accused comments on page 1436 and the following pages. 1346 in the accused's statement. Now to number 105, that is T37 brackets 98, a letter from the accused to von Taden of 15/11/43, the treatment of Jews of foreign nationality, that is Greek and Italy. Italian. I shall not read the whole letter to the court, but I wish to call attention to the marginal remark that the Foreign Office had a whole filing system called Jews' Final Solution. If the court will observe the first page, at the foot of the page, handwritten. At the end of the page, Juden Endgiltung, Jews, the final solution. First word is Juden and Endlesung.
President of Court, do you have a translation of this?
Yes, there is a translation. The Secretary of Court corrects the number given by the prosecution, the number of the document, as marked by the court, and mentions that this was already marked T612. (621). I come now to 520, a letter from Ginter, 4B4B office, to von Taden of the 2nd of March 44. Ginter informs that Jews of foreign nationality now in Greece did not receive from the police a demand to return to their countries, and again those who are considered for return to their countries of origin by having them transferred to the camp in Bergen-Belsen.
That will be Exhibit T997.
346. A letter by von Taden to the accused, 11 October 44. The Foreign Office has a letter from the headquarters command of the Wehrmacht in regard to deportations from Greece. The Foreign Office is at a loss what to do in this matter, but takes it that the financing of deportations of Jews from Greece will be taken care of by the accused department.
That will be Exhibit T998.
The final document of the chapter of Greece 1663, and here I request a decision by this court in accordance with paragraph 15 of our law. This is an affidavit which was presented to the court in Nuremberg and marked AO, that TW 1575, and this concerns a German soldier, Erwin Lenz, L-E-N-Z. The affidavit is dated 11 May 47 and describes the activities and actions of the army and police for the purge of the Greek islands, Rhodes, and all the neighboring islands from its Jews. At the end of the German rule in those islands, that is in the months June and July 1944. This, in fact, is the only source we have in our documents, how it came about that these Jews were also arrested and most of them exterminated by foundering the ship, by on the way to Auschwitz, and they finally, some of them did arrive at Auschwitz to the gas chambers. The soldier knows and relates only what he saw with his own eyes.
President of Court, it was a private.
He does say that he was sentenced on the 30th of November 37 to 2 years and 9 months prison with hard labor for anti-Nazi activities. Therefore, it is clear that he did not sympathize with the Gestapo and the SS units. He himself served in Rhodes with the German army and relates his experiences, personal experiences, especially about the commando and the man who was in charge in Rhodes. I request the court to admit this document in evidence.
Do you have any information about this Lenz?
No, we have no information at all. I must add here that we did not really make attempts to locate the man. If the court instructs, we shall do so. At the moment, we have no information about the whereabouts of this Lenz.
President of Court, Dr. Savatius, have you any comments?
Ich habe diese einmal gelesen, ich habe sie aber heute nicht hier, weil sie nicht auf meiner Rolle steht. Ich wäre auch dafür, dass man zunächst einmal sucht, diesen Mann zu finden.
Say, Dr. Savatius.
I
read this affidavit once. I do not have it with me because it does not appear on my list for today. I too would prefer to have efforts made to locate this man.
The court is now in consultation.
Wenn der letzte Aufenthalt aus der Urkunde hervorgeht, dann wird es bei dem ausgezeichneten Meldesystem in Deutschland nicht schwierig sein, ihn zu finden.
Dr. Servatius, if a person's name appears in the document, his last stay, then the excellent system in Germany will enable us to locate him without delay.
The prosecution, we have his address in 47, and I believe through the registry we could perhaps locate him.